Hey guys, welcome to Flowcast, a podcast by Flowout where we chat with successful entrepreneurs, freelancers, and other amazing professionals that are crushing it in their game. We are Flo and Gal, and we'll be your host on this audio journey. In this week's episode, we'll chat with Max Haining, who's helping non-techies bring their ideas to life with no code. We have tons of interesting topics to discuss, so without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Hey Max, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Really excited to be here and talk all things no code and product and bootstrapping and community and all that good stuff.
Yeah, amazing. So let's just jump in. I'm going to ask you, who are you and how would your family and friends describe you?
Sure. So I'm Max, founder of 100 Days of No Code. And that's always a tricky question, that one. I'm always a little bit stumped by answering that, which probably isn't ideal, being the first question. I'm already stumped, but I'd say normally just like super kind of curious and sort of ambitious and hardworking. Probably like my nan would say I'm too hardworking because I'm just always at my laptop. Yeah, those three things combined, I'd probably say is what people would or what friends would kind of call me.
Okay, pretty nice. Yeah. And what about your background? How did you get to the point you are right now?
Yeah. I guess I've always been interested in business from a young age. At university, I started an Airbnb for storage startup with kind of a team of other non-techies, just like myself, and we kind of raised some money. We won some awards, but we did that all without actually having a product, and we spent all our kind of money on developers, and yeah, that was essentially the kind of the seed planted for me that I needed to become a little bit more technical, because we were far too dependent on others to build our own ideas. So yeah, that was kind of at university, and we eventually failed on that startup, like most startup stories, I guess. And since then, I joined a social impact innovation graduate program from university, and that was basically a year to kind of build a social impact startup. And then off the back of that, I started 100 Days of No Code. So that's my kind of quick whistle-stop tour, like, of how I've got here today.
Wow. So basically there was like no other side projects or something like that you had, just the innovation thing and then becoming a startup founder of 100 Days of No Code.
Pretty much, yeah. So it was earlier than I expected to dive into building something like this. And I never started 100 Days of No Code as a business. I started it as a way to learn some no code skills. And then sort of 4, 5, 6 months down the line, I realized that it could be turned into a business. So that's when the switch happened. But yeah, only started as a learning opportunity.
Yeah, talking about 100 Days of No Code, we always love to hear founders talk about their idea, their products, their companies. Could you tell us more about it?
Sure, yeah, of course. So 100 Days of No Code essentially is an online campus where career switchers, creators, and professionals come to learn how to no code in kind of an accessible, interesting, engaging way, hopefully. And we offer a combination of different courses for people to get started on their no code journey, whether that's our kind of 30-minute daily bite-sized lessons, or if that's our kind of more intense, immersive live boot camps. So hopefully we've got plenty of options for people to take depending on various things.
And I'm curious, where do you see this going? You can give us like the rundown of the vision, like from the business book definition, but also like dive deeper. Where do you see it in a few years, or what's the final goal?
Yeah, the final goal. And I think this is actually an interesting topic because most Bootstrap founders talk about their final MRR destination, but not their like final impact destination. And I've never shared my numbers, and I'm firmly on the impact side of things. And that's what excites me most. And that's why I've kind of worked on this for the last 2.5 years. So I think the impact or kind of the vision is really to empower more people with tech skills that wouldn't otherwise be able to build things online. So that's like that fundamentally. And then to put that in a numbers kind of lens, we want to hit sort of 1 million people within the next 5 to 10 years and educate them with these skills. So that's the kind of the nutshell of it. And long term, I think we want to kind of make this similar to how people experience learning languages with Duolingo, but kind of but for no code. But that is a very long-term vision.
Yeah, I like this, a mark of 1 million, and we'll talk about this number a bit later on. For now, I'm interested, how will you achieve that? Like, what is your approach to teaching people no code? How is your program different from others?
Yeah, it's such a big number that it can be quite scary. I think really our approach is creating rather than kind of creating like a Netflix of no code, just by creating all this content and then hoping people will go and watch it. What we're doing instead is trying to create interesting learning experiences for people in accessible ways. So our main challenge is the 100 Days of No Code Challenge. And that is basically a daily bite-sized sequence where people can learn to no code in a guided way, completely free, and in only 30 minutes a day. So we believe by kind of providing this sort of free, accessible, sustainable way of learning, we can funnel lots and lots of people through that sequence. And hopefully each quarter, each time it goes round, we can kind of increase the amount of people that go through it.
I see. Perfect. And we don't want to get too philosophical early on, but do you feel like there are like some other key takeaways people get from your program besides learning new tools? Of course, learning new skill is enjoyable. What's the feedback from the users so far?
Yeah, I think beyond obviously learning the tools themselves, there's probably two outcomes or that people have from the program. So one, it seems to help people build a learning habit. So because it is daily and because it's bite-sized, people feel like it's much more achievable to keep going and sustain their learning over not just a few days, but actually like 30 days, which is quite a good kind of end result in and of itself. But also people, so yesterday a woman that was going through our course messaged me and said, out of all the things that I learned from this program, the one thing that it helped me with is think in a more creative way. I'd never thought creatively, and this opened my eyes to like how I could create ideas in unique ways online. And that was kind of another outcome that I'd not designed for, but it clearly happened.
Wow, yeah, that's super inspiring actually. And bite-sized lesson, I guess it's a very interesting approach as well. So let's talk a little bit about the 1 million people mark. How many have you already taught no code since the day one?
Yeah, it's not. We're a little way off that total at the moment, but we get there one day. So currently we're at 12K alumni. So we started in middle of 2020. So we've currently taught 12K, and we're putting really the infrastructure in place so that we can scale our impact. And I think up until this point, we've been validating whether people actually enjoy our learning experiences and have good outcomes from it. Now we kind of know that. We want to bring that into the hands of more people. So hopefully if we chat in a year's time, that number's far bigger. But that's where we're at the moment.
Absolutely, I hope so as well. And can you like share how many new people sign up for each quarter? You said you're doing like quarterly courses, so.
Yeah, of course. So we kind of have two main courses. So we have our bootcamp and our sort of signature 100 days of no code challenge, obviously the name of the business. So with the challenge, we have about 2,000 people that join our challenge every quarter. And then for our bootcamp, between 50 and 100 people join our bootcamps once a quarter as well. So yeah, we're looking at just over 2,000 people through our programs each quarter at the moment. But yeah, always trying to kind of push the needle on that and tap into new audiences.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And can you share like some interesting projects that people build during or even after your program?
Yeah, it's that is a really hard one, because there's the I think the beauty of no code is the diversity in what you can create. So I've seen some weird and wacky things that have been created over the past kind of 2.5 years that probably would never have been created had no code not existed. So I guess a most recent one that kind of comes to mind as I'm speaking is a project called Cluso, and it is a AI-powered research tool that basically helps researchers that want to collect like rich qualitative feedback on products or different kind of studies from voice recordings, but then also it helps those researchers summarize that data really quickly. So the AI will basically take in voice notes and then summarize those voice notes into like very specific kind of well-wrapped summaries that the researcher can quickly look through. So that just gives you a sense of like how niche and how diverse like a project can be in no code and how specific it can be.
Wow, yeah, that's super interesting, because like just thinking about the background that it was built with no code, it's I guess mind-blowing already.
Yeah, exactly. And each month, each day, people are kind of pushing the boundaries of no code, and it always surprises me what people are building, because the space is growing, the tools are getting more powerful, and the things you can do with it are becoming more diverse. So yeah, really exciting space.
Yeah, so let's jump a little bit back to the product itself. What are the biggest challenges you had to overcome, like growing and building 100 days of no code?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it earlier, but I only started 100 days of no code because I wanted to learn to no code. So I never started it as a business. And what that meant was that it was in the middle of lockdown. I was really excited about this thing called no code, but didn't really have the knowledge to get started. That's why I said, I'm going to spend the next 100 days while I'm in my room, while I can't do anything else because it's COVID, and learn this new skill. The problem I had was it became, or started becoming, a business sort of 50 days into my journey. And what that meant was that I still hadn't really properly learned to no code. So people were, I guess, expecting, or at least from my side, I was putting pressure on myself to start creating courses and content around this 100 days of no code challenge. But the problem being, I didn't have the knowledge or the skill set to actually teach people. So all it was at the start was a challenge, a hashtag. And then over time, it became a community. And then from a community, it became a course and an educational program. So I guess there was a lag or time lag between my skills and what I wanted it to be, which was an educational program. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges I had getting started.
And talking about the early beginnings, was that how you got your first customers, through that community that gathered around the hashtag?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, Twitter was our audience and still is a massive part of our audience. And that is where the first seed of our community came from, and where we got our first customers from. Yeah.
I see. And to follow that up, how have your growth tactics changed since then? What do you do now? Like, how do you get people to sign up?
Yeah. So when I was just getting started, the first kind of way we monetized was essentially offering a membership. So for people going on the 100 Days of No Code Challenge, they could get a membership. They get access to a Slack community, some extra tool discounts, all that kind of stuff. So what I did in the early days was just the unscalable stuff, which was DMing people on Twitter that were using the hashtag and saying, hey, you're on the challenge. Looks like you're making really good progress. But you could make even better progress if you joined our membership community. So I basically cold DM'd anyone that was using the hashtag, and then they would be our first members joining the community, and they were paying like 10 quid a month, £10 a month. So that was my initial growth, or my initial monetization tactic, was just hanging out in people's Twitter DMs and seeing if they would join the community. So that was the start. And then now I think we're kind of doing more long-term sort of growth initiatives. So for example, we are working hard to kind of grow our SEO. So again, that's more of a long-term play. We are working on partnerships with other kind of organizations. So that's incubators or universities, and tapping into kind of new distribution networks that we didn't or don't have currently. So basically just kind of going from the scrappy stuff, which actually still works really well and we should probably still do more of, to the more long-term scalable growth initiatives. But probably a blend of both is probably the best approach.
Maybe willing to share which acquisition channels are working the best for you at the moment?
To be honest, it hasn't changed much in 3 years. It's probably still Twitter, just because we have a strong hashtag where people are sharing their learning experience every day using the 100 Days of No Code hashtag. And what that does is that any new learner that we have then creates, I guess, awareness for our brand, and then brings more people into the programs that we have. So that's like a flywheel, I guess, that we've kind of lent into, and it's worked really well for us. And yeah, it hasn't really changed since the beginning. So I'd say still Twitter.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are no tactics to look down on. For us at Flowout, for example, cold emailing is working very well, which is surprising for some of us. But of course, as long as it's ethical, why not, find people where they are.
Yeah.
While on the topic, are there any channels that you haven't tried yet but want to in the future?
Yeah, good question. I think we've just, so this week we've just put out our first 2 TikToks, which is fun. And both of them have got a total of like 6 views. So it's very early days on that one. And who knows how that will go, but intrigued to kind of test TikTok out and maybe grow the top of funnel awareness for no code on TikTok. But yeah, again, maybe in a year's time, I'll update you guys and see how that's going.
No, for sure. By the time this episode launches, it's going to be at least one viral one. I have no doubt.
I hope so. Yeah.
And for those early users who joined the program some time ago, how does the course evolve for them? Are you constantly adding new tools, new features? Is it still valuable for someone who has maybe finished all their lectures to stay a member. Even, of course, the Slack channel and the community are good to be a part of, but any other benefits?
Yeah, so this is definitely something that it's an ongoing challenge, but it's also an ongoing kind of source of excitement, is just how fast the space is growing, which means that we as educators have to keep pace with this landscape and have to update content, have to maintain content, but also add new content. So whether that's new tools coming out, whether that's Notion updating or adding Notion AI, all these kind of things, you have to keep on top of that. And that's something we certainly are doing for our members, is making sure that we can kind of bring them the best content and learning experiences that are up to date and that kind of are somewhat in line with the kind of the growth of this landscape. So we're always looking for new tools to work with, but also create content around. And in terms of like why people stay, the other thing I want to mention is we have a creators in residence program, which basically means that our learners who've gone through the challenge or gone through our programs, they can become teachers. And we can kind of provide them sort of paid opportunities to then become no-code educators themselves. So that's another reason for people to stay.
Cool. Yeah, that's a very clever way of like scaling things.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're like running a bootstrapped project, right? It's free to get started. You already talked about monetizing things. So I'm just wondering, did you ever think about any VC investments at some point, or did anyone even reach out trying to invest into 100 days of no code?
Yeah, good question. So I've never seriously considered kind of that route before, but it's definitely something I haven't closed my mind to either. I think if kind of the right setup, an investor came along and kind of was aligned or like mission aligned, I think that could be an interesting opportunity. But we've definitely not sort of received any kind of interest on that front ourselves. But I guess it becomes more interesting to investors if we have a product of some form down the line. But at the moment, it's more educational content. So who knows? But yeah, intentionally bootstrapped at the moment, but who knows in the future.
And do you have some advice to someone like thinking about bootstrapping their own project? Do you think there's like anything a founder should prioritize in a situation like that?
Yeah, it really depends on your circumstances, but I'd say design or try to design a business that, one, is sustainable, easier said than done. But what I mean by that is focus on, or try to focus on, people or customers or a revenue model that that will be paying you, rather than probably the traditional venture kind of route where you kind of get in as many free users and then try and monetize those free users. So I think it probably makes more sense to, in a way, try and find customers that are going to pay you like out the gates. But again, easier said than done. And then also design a business that is something that you enjoy and that you'll be passionate about for a long time. Can you see yourself working on it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, is a question as well you should ask. But there's no silver bullet, there's no one way of doing it. So yeah, it's really just down to the individual at play.
Yeah, great answer. I completely agree. And I'm just like wondering, do you think you have some unique skills that you think helped you steer the business in the right direction and grow it successfully? You already talked about like being curious, being very hardworking. How's that?
Yeah, I definitely don't think I've got any unique skills. I think it's very much born out of just being around the right people and then soaking up as much knowledge as possible. And I think the one thing that we've maintained from nearly 3 years of doing this is just the amount of experiments we've run, and getting closer and closer to kind of more insights and learning, to know what's working and what isn't. So there's been many different iterations of how we've run the 100 Days of No Code Challenge. We used to just run it so that anyone could join now, or at least anyone could join at any time. Now people have to wait until the first of every new quarter. So there's lots of design decisions you can make. There's lots of pricing decisions you can make, product decisions you can make. But I think the thing that we've done well is just test them out and experiment in different formats continuously, so that we're always learning and improving. So no unique skills on my side, apart from just experimentation and getting more information to make better decisions.
Okay, yeah, nice. And is there anything you like learned from your previous startup and then did it like differently with 100 Days of No Code?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one, it's not really a learning, but it's just a different approach, is and the thing I keep telling myself is, I wish I knew that no code existed on our previous startup, because if I had known that, I'm not saying it would have been a success, but it would have been far less bumpy. So it's less of a learning and more of a reflection, like, of how important or crucial no code would have been. And now, knowing that fact, I think it makes sense for any early stage business to kind of validate and build with no code initially, before investing anything more than that. So that's the key takeaway.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the unique skills, the skills to have. Do you feel like the community you accumulated after the years, is that you just putting in the work, the hours, making good decisions? Or does a person need, like, let's say, online charisma to generate a community around their product?
Yeah, great question. I think it's the charisma side is probably less important, because I guess when I got started in no code, I didn't have any audience, no one knew me, and I was very much kind of an introvert. So I wasn't probably leading with like a unique way or kind of some interesting charisma. I was more just leading with a sense of care. And I think people responded to that sense of care, in the sense of, I always reached out to people. I sent personal DMs. I made sure they were always checked in on people that in our community. I think people felt that sense of care and then wanted to reciprocate it, whether that's supporting us on Product Hunt or giving us shout outs on Twitter. But when people know that you're invested in their growth, they'll probably be invested in yours as well. So that's probably the best answer I can give on that one.
No, it's a perfect answer. And how do you feel like this sense of care scales? Like, with time, you are probably not able to reply to everyone who's shooting a DM. How do you achieve that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I was thinking this the other day, because for our boot camp, they're in week 3 of the boot camp, week 3 or 4, and at the start of week 3 they begin building their MVP with no code, and I send everyone on the boot camp a voice note, and I was kind of going through the list of sort of 60 of them. I was like, whoa, this is taking quite a long time now. And I enjoy doing it, but also I was thinking, okay, cool, so like, how does this scale? Yeah, I actually don't know. I think it's probably trying to, I think the answer is essentially automating as much as you can of what you're doing, and then optimizing for that human touch in the most important like moment. So we automate a lot of our boot camp, but then the points at which can't be automated or shouldn't be automated, that's where we kind of lean in with the human touch. So the automation almost gives us room for that human side of it as well. So that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, that's a good view, and I hope it works out. Like, we'll have to get back in touch in a few months to see how that has worked for you. And you, of course, you talked about sending voice messages. You also encourage people to connect and build in public. What do you feel are some advantages of building in public? In your experience, does it help people to stay motivated, to get some advice? What are the biggest pros and maybe some cons?
Sure, of course. I think the way I look at it is it's like the difference between building a stealth startup and a building public startup, but just for learners. So it's like, are you going to learn in stealth, or are you going to learn in public? And learning in public basically is like a social learning experience that holds you accountable to far more people, rather than learning stealth, where you're just like in your room and you only have yourself to keep yourself accountable. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage, is by sharing what you're learning, other people are there to like watch you and see you, and also will know when you drop off. So that's the scariest thing. You want to keep going, because otherwise people are going to like know when you've like fallen off building or learning or progressing. So I think that's the biggest I guess plus from a learning experience point of view. And then just the I guess inspiration you get from building in public. So sharing your ideas means that you have you create a magnet for other people to contribute to those ideas, but then you can also contribute to theirs as well. And again, none of that would happen if you were just learning in stealth. So those are probably the two biggest things. I think the hardest part about it all is just staying consistent. I don't tweet much, or haven't tweeted much recently, and that's because I haven't been consistent. And as soon as you stop tweeting, it becomes harder and harder to get back on the wagon and start tweeting again. So staying consistent is the hardest thing possible around that whole thing.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the consistency plays a vital role here. What about the hashtag 100 days of no code? It's like instant building public thing. So when people get on Twitter, are you seeing them connect with each other? Like you said, discuss different projects, different things they're doing. How's that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And people often tell me that using the 100 days of no code hashtag was obviously not only their way of starting to no code, but it was actually their first time that they built in public, and it was like a great opportunity to do that, because really it's like an excuse. Like you can't, because the biggest barrier people have when they start on Twitter is no one's gonna like what I say. I don't know what to share. It's scary. I'm going to be speaking into the void. Well, none of that really matters when you're using the hashtag, because it's like you've then got permission to, or at least an excuse to tweet, because it's like, oh, well, I'm on this challenge, so I have to kind of tweet every day. Someone else has told me, versus them actually doing it themselves. And then by like day 10, it's like they're off, they're away, and they're used to tweeting. And then they become more comfortable sharing their own kind of personality and all that good stuff. So I think that's probably the biggest tip of building public, is just building a cadence up of tweeting, regardless of what you're actually saying. It doesn't need to be anything extraordinary. Just becoming comfortable, and then you'll get to a point where you're happy to express yourself a bit more.
Yeah, and like I'm sure people are building real connections from that also for the future, even after the bootcamp and so on, which is pretty amazing to just connect, go out there, build something. So yeah, about the like connections, I also read that you host real life meetups, or at least are going to. How did you come to that point? Do like a lot of people join, are interested into that?
Yeah, so we are planning on some meetups. To be honest, we haven't run any kind of no code meetups like specifically, but that's definitely something we want to bridge the kind of online and offline world. And I think that's when it's like most magical, is when you're meeting the people that you're also like seeing on Twitter every day. It really like brings it home, that whole experience, and kind of builds that relationship even stronger. So I definitely want to lean into that, and definitely need to set some cool events up over the next year.
Yeah, amazing. I'll make sure to watch out for anything interesting.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And do you also like stay in touch with people that already went through the program after a few months maybe, and they come back with some feedback? Does that give you like extra motivation, extra boost to say?
Yeah, no, it does. So I follow most people that go through our program anyway, so it's interesting kind of to see what they do after the boot camp or the 100 days of no code challenge, and it's always cool to kind of see their wins as they kind of progress from that point. And yeah, it's what you need, right? Especially as a bootstrap founder, it's a grind every day. So hearing those wins that are related to what you've done is hugely motivating. Yeah, I definitely need to do a better job of sharing those stories, because at the moment we haven't really done that, but there's plenty of them, and really excited to kind of share the impact no code is having on lots of people. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. The impact that no code has on numerous people is really huge. And just to zoom out a bit, what are your thoughts on the development of no code? Where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, the $1 million question. Yeah, it's yeah. I guess there are so many different trends happening at the moment. So you've got kind of no code and AI, no code and Web3, and then just the tools, traditional tools themselves are becoming even more powerful. So really, there's going to almost be a meeting in the middle of no code and code. And I think as the tools become more powerful, we're going to see an increase in the speed of development, but also in the kind of features that you can build, but also in the scale that you can build them at. So obviously there has been some products that have scaled to hundreds of thousands of users with no code, but I think as these products become more mature, so Darlo have recently reconfigured their databases to kind of be a little bit more stronger and scalable, and Glide have also done the same, etc. We'll see products scaling on no code to hopefully hundreds of thousands, even millions of users in the soon to near future, hopefully.
Yeah, exciting things to come in the future, definitely.
Yeah.
And I want to flip a script just a bit and ask you, what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing the things that you know now?
Yeah, good one. That's a definitely a tough one. I think it's probably, so the thing that really got me the furthest so far on this kind of journey is connecting with like-minded people. And I know it's kind of a cliche, but connecting with people that are all kind of doing the same thing as you. So, and just basically doing that sooner than you think you need to. And that basically gave me the biggest jump start in my journey with 100 days of no code, is being surrounded by the right people on Twitter, etc. So connecting with more cool people early on is what I would do. because you're then going to be surrounded by cool ideas, inspiration, projects, collaborations, all these things that you would never have access to before. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, great advice. It's just like keeps getting better.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So we are nearing the end of this podcast episode. So I'm just going to ask you a few burst questions. And I'm sure you have some great answers for us.
Awesome.
So what's one book everyone should read before building their startup or their own product?
Yeah. So I was debating between two here. So I think there's Shoe Dog, so the founder of Nike. I think that's a really awesome story and brings out loads of different business lessons, but also life lessons. So I'd certainly read that from a business point of view. And then I'd also read Atomic Habits, just from like a compounding point of view. You can compound in business, but also in your learning journeys. And I think that's such a powerful message as well. So those two.
Okay. And do you listen to any podcasts? If so, which one's your favorite?
Yes, My First Million for sure. That's epic. Yeah.
Great. And since you're in the no-code space, obviously, I'm going to ask, what's the one no-code tool that made your life or your work simpler?
I'd have to say Notion, for sure. Yeah.
Agree. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, it's too good.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much for taking your time joining the podcast. I'm sure it gets very busy during the day for you, so I really appreciate it you coming here. This was some great insights from your side, so thank you so much, and hope we can chat again really sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a real fun talking to you guys, and yeah, hope to catch up soon.